There are moments in life when you feel as though you're losing yourself, not because you're weak, not because you're broken, but because you've been giving and giving until the pieces of you no longer belong to you. And in those quiet hours, when you look in the mirror and hardly recognize your reflection, you wonder, what happened to me? The truth is, so many of us, especially those with deep hearts and tender souls, have been taught that our worth is measured in sacrifice. That love means pouring ourselves out until we're empty. That beauty lies in silence, in keeping the peace, in bending until our spine no longer remembers how to stand tall. And yet there's another side to the story. There's a power, ancient and timeless, waiting within you, a power Jung once spoke of, though not in the words of self-help or lectures, but in symbols, in whispers, in the dance between what we call masculine and feminine energy. But here's the thing most people don't tell you. Stepping into your feminine energy doesn't mean losing yourself. It doesn't mean abandoning your voice, or becoming softer until you dissolve into someone else's shadow. No, it means remembering. It means returning to the place inside you that knows the rhythm of life, that feels instead of always forcing, that listens instead of endlessly performing. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. It's not submission, it's strength in its most raw, unpolished form. I want you to imagine this. A woman standing at the edge of a storm. The world tells her to armor up, to fight, to conquer. But instead, she closes her eyes, opens her palms, and lets the rain wash over her. She does not disappear. She does not collapse. She allows. She feels. And in that moment, she is more powerful than any soldier, because she is rooted in something eternal. That is what tapping into your feminine energy feels like when it's real, when it's not performative, when it doesn't cost you your soul. And if you're listening to this right now, maybe some part of you is tired of running, tired of trying to be both invincible and invisible. Maybe you're craving something gentler, something truer. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more you. It's about remembering the part of you that never needed fixing, only needed to be heard. So, as you lean into this journey with me, breathe. Let the words land where they need to. This is not a lecture. This is not theory. This is a reflection meant for you, yes, you, because I know you felt unseen. I know you've carried too much, loved too hard, lost too deeply. And yet, you are still here, listening, searching. If this resonates with you, stay close. Let's walk together into the depths of what it means to embrace the feminine without losing yourself. And if your heart feels called, I invite you to join this space, subscribe, share. Let others who need this message find it too. Because the world doesn't just need louder voices, it needs truer ones. There's a quiet kind of pain that comes from always being the strong one. You know it well. You've held everything together while no one noticed how much it cost you. You've smiled when your chest felt heavy. You've been generous when your own cup was empty. And you've silenced your needs because someone else's seemed louder. And somewhere along the way, you began to believe that your softness was dangerous, that if you leaned into it, you'd vanish, you'd be used, you'd be left behind. But that is not the truth. The truth is, the feminine energy inside you is not about fragility, it's about presence. It's about being so rooted in who you are that you can feel deeply without drowning, that you can love without losing yourself. And yes, it takes courage, because for so long, we've been told that strength is hard edges and constant motion, that softness means weakness, that surrender means defeat. But what if it doesn't? What if surrender is not giving up, but finally letting yourself be carried for once? What if the deepest strength is in the stillness you've been running from? Carl Jung spoke of the anima, the inner feminine, as the part of the soul that carries intuition, creativity, and connection. But let's strip away the names and the theories for a moment. What he was pointing to is something you've always known in your bones, the quiet voice that whispers when you're about to betray yourself. The gut feeling that tells you this isn't love even though you wish it were. The instinct that says, you deserve more. That is her. That is your inner feminine. And every time you ignore her, you feel that sting of disconnection, that ache of living half a life. Think of the times you've silenced yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. You told yourself it was love, but love that requires you to disappear is not love. Or the times you pushed yourself to exhaustion, chasing achievement after achievement, and still felt hollow inside. That hollowness was not failure. It was your feminine energy calling you back home. And maybe you didn't listen then, but you can listen now. The first sign that you're reconnecting with her is when you begin to trust your own rhythms. You stop comparing your pace to everyone else's, and you start honoring your own. You no longer force yourself into molds that were never meant for you. You allow yourself to slow down when you're tired, to speak when something hurts, to walk away when love no longer feels like love. And it may feel uncomfortable at first, like you're betraying the roles you've always played, but what you're really doing is choosing yourself. Imagine what it would feel like to no longer confuse overgiving with devotion, to no longer confuse silence with peace, to no longer confuse survival with love. That is the gift of the divine feminine. It doesn't strip you of your strength. It teaches you how to use it without abandoning your soul. And I know, right now, you may be asking, but what if I lose them? What if they walk away when I stop pouring everything into them? My friend, if you have to lose yourself to keep them, you've already lost. The ones who are meant for you will not fear your fullness. They will not run from your truth. They will rise to meet it. So, I want you to breathe into this moment. Let yourself feel the possibility of a life where you don't abandon yourself anymore, where your feminine energy is not a burden, but a compass, where your softness is not your weakness, but your power. This is not about becoming someone new. It's about becoming who you always were, before the world told you otherwise. There is a reason you feel torn inside when you overgive, when you bend too much, when you silence yourself until your throat feels heavy. That ache is not weakness, it's a signal. It's your inner feminine whispering that you were not born to be a shadow in your own life. And yet, we're taught to ignore that signal, to push it down, to prove ourselves worthy by carrying more than our share. But what if the very thing you've been told to repress is the key to your freedom? The feminine inside you is not a mask you put on. It's not a performance of grace or sweetness. It's not lowering your eyes or shrinking your voice. Number. It's raw. It's wild. It's the unfiltered truth that lives in your chest when you're alone at night and no one is watching. It's the part of you that cries without shame, that loves without calculation, that creates without needing permission. And when you let her breathe, you don't become smaller, you expand. But here's the paradox. People fear what they don't understand. Some will fear your softness because it cannot be controlled. Some will fear your honesty because it reveals what they've been hiding from themselves. Some will fear your presence because it forces them to feel. And so, you may have learned to dim that light to keep others comfortable, to protect their comfort at the expense of your truth. This is where the wound deepens. This is where you start losing yourself without even realizing it. But I want you to see this clearly. Your feminine energy is not here to destroy your relationships. It is here to transform them. When you embrace it, you stop engaging in connections that drain you. You stop trying to heal people who refuse to heal themselves. You stop mistaking pain for passion. And in that shift, something miraculous happens. The people who are meant for you begin to appear. The ones who are not intimidated by your depth, who are not threatened by your truth, who are not afraid of your power. It will take courage. Because to walk this path is to disappoint some. You will no longer be the version of yourself that everyone can use, mold, or control. You will not always be applauded. Some will leave. Some will criticize. Some will call you too much. But I promise you this, you will also breathe in a way you never have before. You will sleep at night without the weight of pretending. You will wake up to mornings where your body feels like it belongs to you again. And when that happens, you'll notice something almost magical. Life begins to respond differently. Opportunities come that once felt out of reach. Love begins to feel like safety instead of survival. Creativity flows again because your energy is no longer trapped in keeping up appearances. You begin to live from your center instead of from your wounds. So if you've been afraid of your feminine energy, I want you to remember, it is not the enemy. It is the home you've been searching for. The question is not, what will I lose if I embrace it? The real question is, what will I lose if I don't? There's a moment, often quiet, when you realize you've been living with a mask so long that you've forgotten the texture of your own skin. Maybe it comes after another relationship that left you empty. Maybe it comes in the middle of the night when your chest feels heavy and you can't point to a reason. Or maybe it comes while scrolling through a perfect world that feels nothing like yours. That ache you feel in those moments, that is your inner feminine knocking on the door saying, enough It's time to come home. Coming home to her does not mean abandoning your strength. It does not mean you stop dreaming, building, achieving. It means you stop using those things to replace the softness you've buried. It means you learn to hold both the fire that moves mountains and the water that heals wounds. And when those two parts of you meet, something changes. You no longer need to fight for your worth. You no longer need to chase what doesn't want to be caught. You begin to magnetize instead of beg. Think of the times you begged for love without words. You bent, you gave, you swallowed your voice, all in the hope that they would stay. And still, the love felt fragile. Still, you felt replaceable. That's because you were trying to earn something that cannot be earned. Real love doesn't arrive when you lose yourself, it arrives when you return to yourself. And when you stand in that truth, people either rise to meet you or they fall away. Both are gifts. Both are answers. The second sign you are stepping into your feminine energy is when you stop running from your emotions. You no longer see them as weaknesses to be fixed, but as messages to be heard. Anger no longer makes you feel ashamed, it tells you where your boundaries are. Sadness no longer feels like failure, it tells you where love once lived. Even your longing is no longer a curse, it tells you where your soul still aches for something real. And when you stop fighting those feelings, you begin to move through them instead of being consumed by them. You begin to trust that they are not here to drown you, but to guide you. This is where the healing deepens. Because for so long you may have been praised for being the one who holds it all together. The one who doesn't cry, the one who always smiles, the one who absorbs everyone else's storms. But deep inside, you've carried your own storm alone. Let me tell you this, you don't have to. Your feminine energy thrives not in isolation, but in connection. Not in hiding, but in sharing. And when you allow yourself to be seen, not the polished version, not the perfect mask, but the raw, tender truth, something inside you begins to breathe again. You may notice how rare it feels when someone holds space for you without rushing to fix you. That's because the world is addicted to quick solutions. But your soul does not need fixing. It needs presence. It needs someone, maybe yourself, most of all, who can sit with your pain without turning away. That is the medicine of the feminine. And here is the paradox. When you let yourself feel, you do not get weaker. You get clearer. You stop wasting your energy holding back tears or swallowing words. You begin to move with truth, not performance. And in that honesty, your relationships shift. Some grow deeper, others fall away. Both are necessary. Because your feminine energy is not interested in what looks good from the outside. It is interested in what feels real on the inside. So, if you are listening right now, and you feel that ache in your chest, let it speak. Don't push it down. Don't label it as too much. That ache is your compass. That ache is your power calling you back. The feminine within you is not a role you play. It's not about appearing gentle so others accept you, or about decorating your life with rituals that look sacred but leave you empty. It's not performance at all. It's something older, deeper. It is the pulse beneath your skin, the silence that waits for you when the noise fades. And yet so often, we confuse losing ourselves with accessing her. We confuse being passive with being present. We confuse giving everything away with being loving. There is a line between nurturing and disappearing, and many of us were never taught how to see it. Maybe you were raised to believe that a good woman gives endlessly, that her love is proven by how much of herself she erases. Or maybe you learned early on that being soft was dangerous, that the world only rewarded you when you hid your sensitivity and played strong. Either way, the message was the same. Your true self is not safe here. But listen, your true self is not only safe, she is sacred. And tapping into your feminine energy is not about returning to weakness. It's about reclaiming that sacred self. That means you begin to notice where you've been vanishing. You start to see the subtle moments when you apologize for taking up space, when you shrink your dreams because someone else feels threatened, when you laugh at things that actually hurt you just to avoid conflict. These tiny betrayals add up. They pile into the heaviness you feel in your chest. And then comes the breaking point, the moment when you can't carry it anymore. For some, it looks like exhaustion so deep you can barely get out of bed. For others, it looks like heartbreak so sharp you finally admit the love you were clinging to was not love at all. And for many, it's a quiet, almost invisible moment, one where you hear yourself laugh, and it sounds hollow, and you realize you haven't felt truly alive in years. That's when something inside whispers, no more. The third sign that you are truly entering your feminine energy is when you begin to set boundaries that honor your soul. And this part is not easy, because boundaries often mean saying no. They mean watching people leave. They mean being misunderstood, sometimes even resented. But what is the cost of not setting them? The cost is your spirit. The cost is your truth. The cost is your life. Boundaries are not walls. They are invitations. They say, "This is how you can meet me without losing me. This is how I can stay in my truth while still loving you." Boundaries are the language of the feminine, because they are born from deep self-respect. And when you begin to practice them, you may feel guilty at first. You may fear you're being selfish, but slowly you'll notice a shift. You'll realize that every no you speak to dishonor is actually a yes to your own life. And in that space, something breathtaking happens. Your energy begins to flow back to you. Creativity stirs again. Your laughter feels like yours again. You feel lighter, freer, more whole. That is what happens when the feminine is alive in you. She doesn't drain you, she restores you. So I want you to pause and feel this. What boundary is your soul asking you to draw right now? Where have you been betraying yourself for the sake of someone else's comfort? What would happen if you honored that ache? If you trusted that voice? You already know the answer. It's waiting for you. There is a tenderness inside you that has always been there, even when you tried to bury it beneath strength, beneath roles, beneath survival. It shows itself in the moments you allow yourself to breathe after holding your breath for too long. It shows in the way your eyes soften when you finally stop pretending. That tenderness is not weakness, it is your feminine energy, and it is asking to be lived, not hidden. The world tells us that to survive, we must harden, be faster, be louder, be untouchable. And maybe you've lived that way for years, maybe even decades. But beneath the armor, you've always longed for something gentler, a kind of strength that doesn't feel like war, a kind of power that doesn't come from exhaustion. That is the paradox of the feminine. She is both fire and water, both fierce and soft, both unshakable and tender. The fourth sign that you are embracing her is when you begin to honor your intuition, even when it doesn't make sense to others. You know that voice inside you, the one you've silenced too many times because it didn't fit logic, or because you were afraid of being wrong. But every time you ignored it, you paid the price. You stayed in relationships that drained you. You said yes when your whole body screamed no. You walked paths that looked good on the outside but felt dead on the inside. And yet, your intuition has never stopped speaking to you. Sometimes it comes as a knot in your stomach. Sometimes as a sudden clarity in your chest. Sometimes as a quiet, steady knowing that refuses to go away. That is the feminine, guiding you. And when you begin to trust her, life starts to shift. You no longer need to explain your every choice to those who will never understand. You no longer need permission to walk away from what doesn't feel right. You begin to live in alignment with yourself. And that alignment is freedom. But I will not lie to you, it is not always easy. Honoring your intuition can be lonely at first. Because when you stop betraying yourself, you stop playing the roles that kept others comfortable. You stop being the fixer, the pleaser, the one who absorbs all the pain in silence. And some people will not like that. They will resist it. They will try to pull you back into the old patterns, but you will feel the difference in your body, how light it feels when you finally choose truth over approval. And slowly, something begins to happen. Life meets you where you are. The people who truly see you, who can love the real you, start to appear. The opportunities that once felt impossible start to unfold. Your days begin to carry a different rhythm, less frantic, more alive. Because you are no longer forcing, you are flowing, you are no longer chasing, you are allowing. And maybe right now you're afraid of that word, allowing. It sounds like losing control. It sounds like becoming passive. But in truth, allowing is one of the greatest acts of power. It means you are no longer at war with yourself. You are no longer forcing life to bend to your wounds. You are letting life meet you as you are. And in that space, you are finally free. So pause for a moment and listen. Can you hear it? That quiet voice inside that says, "This isn't who I am anymore. I am ready for something else." That is her. That is the part of you that has been waiting all this time. There comes a time when you realize that all the striving, all the proving, all the endless giving has left you with nothing but exhaustion. And it is in that moment when your body says no. When your heart feels heavy, that the invitation of the feminine becomes loud enough to hear. She does not call you to do more. She calls you to undo, to soften, to rest, to remember that you are not here only to survive, but to live. The fifth sign that you are stepping into your feminine energy is when you learn to receive without guilt. This one feels the hardest for so many of us, because we've been taught that our value comes from how much we can give. To receive feels selfish, indulgent, almost shameful. But tell me, how can a river flow if it never rains? How can a heart keep loving if it is never held? To receive is not weakness. It is balance. It is allowing yourself to be nourished in the same way you nourish others. Think of how many times someone offered you kindness, and you brushed it away with, "I'm fine, I don't need it." Think of how many times love tried to reach you, but you couldn't let it in because you were afraid it would make you look needy. That fear didn't protect you, it starved you. And slowly, it built the belief that you must carry life alone. But that is not true. The feminine within you knows that life is not meant to be carried alone. She knows that intimacy, connection, support, these are not luxuries, they are lifelines. And when you allow yourself to receive, something inside begins to heal. You realize that you don't have to earn love by overextending. You realize that you don't have to prove your worth by always being the strong one. You begin to let others show up for you. And in doing so, you learn what real love feels like. Not the kind that drains you, but the kind that restores you. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. You will want to apologize. You will want to give back immediately, to balance the scales. But slowly, you will notice how much lighter life feels when you stop rejecting what is freely given. You will notice that receiving is not taking, it is opening. It is trusting. It is saying, "I am worthy of this too." And then, something beautiful unfolds. Your relationships shift. They no longer revolve around sacrifice and imbalance. They begin to hold reciprocity, tenderness, flow. You no longer carry resentment for giving too much, because you are no longer pouring from an empty cup. You no longer chase crumbs of attention, because you know the banquet of love that happens when two people can both give and receive. This is not just about romance. It is about every part of your life. It is about receiving rest without guilt, receiving silence without filling it, receiving joy without doubting it, receiving the miracle of your own breath as enough. This is what the feminine reminds you. You don't have to keep earning the right to exist. You already belong. So, I ask you now, what would change if you let yourself receive? What if you stopped apologizing for your needs? What if you let life meet you instead of always running ahead of it? There's a quiet strength that appears when you stop fighting yourself, when you no longer push against your own tides, but learn to move with them. This is where the feminine energy becomes not just a concept, but a lived reality. And the truth is, it feels less like becoming someone new and more like remembering who you were before the world told you to harden. The sixth sign that you are rooted in this energy is when you allow yourself to create, not for achievement, not for recognition, but simply because creation is life moving through you. Think back to when you were a child, drawing shapes on paper with no fear of them being perfect, humming a song to yourself without caring if it sounded good, dancing in the living room just because your body wanted to move. That was your feminine energy, pure, unfiltered, unapologetic. But as you grew, maybe you learned to measure your worth in productivity. Maybe you learned to silence your joy because it looked foolish, to hide your art because it wasn't good enough, to trade your creativity for practicality. And each time, something in you dimmed. That dimming didn't mean you lost her. It meant she was waiting for the day you would remember her again. When you step back into this energy, you find yourself pulled toward expression. You begin journaling, painting, writing, singing, moving sometimes in ways that make no sense to the logical mind. But that's the point. The feminine does not live in logic alone. She lives in expression. She doesn't need to justify why. She only asks, does this make me feel alive? And the beauty of this is that when you create from this place, you stop needing validation. You're no longer performing for the applause. You're no longer silencing yourself because of fear of judgment. You're simply being. And that being is magnetic. People feel it when you speak from this place. They sense it when you walk into a room. Not because you're louder, but because you're more real. This kind of expression doesn't just heal you, it heals others. Because when you show up unfiltered, you give others permission to do the same. Your authenticity becomes an invitation. Your presence becomes medicine. And suddenly, the world feels less lonely, less disconnected, because you've dared to live from your feminine essence. And here's what I want you to hear. You don't need to wait until it's perfect. You don't need to wait until you feel ready. The feminine moves in the moment. She paints with messy strokes. She sings off-key. She speaks even when her voice trembles. And in that imperfection, there is a beauty far more powerful than perfection could ever hold. So, let me ask you this. What part of you has been waiting to be expressed? What dream have you been keeping in the dark because you thought it wasn't practical, wasn't impressive, wasn't safe? What would happen if you let it out? Not for anyone else, but for you. The seventh sign that you are stepping into your feminine energy is when you stop confusing chaos with passion. For so many of us, love was first experienced as turbulence. Maybe in your childhood, the ones who were supposed to protect you were also the ones who hurt you. Maybe affection came with conditions, approval came with silence, and love was always just slightly out of reach. And so, you grew to equate instability with intimacy. You mistook the storm for the ocean. This is why you stayed in relationships that broke you down. Why you tolerated the hot and cold, the constant uncertainty, the push and pull that left you questioning your worth. Because deep down, some part of you believed that love was supposed to feel like survival. That if it wasn't complicated, it wasn't real. But this belief is not the truth, it is the wound speaking. And when you begin to heal, when you step into your feminine energy, you begin to see the difference. You begin to crave calm. You begin to recognize safety not as boring, but as sacred. You begin to choose partners, friends, and environments that don't drain you but restore you. This shift is not about lowering your standards, it's about raising them. It's about saying, I will no longer confuse pain with love. I will no longer accept chaos as proof of passion. I will no longer disappear to keep someone else close. And here's the miracle. When you stop chasing chaos, you make space for peace. Peace doesn't mean life will be free of challenges, but it does mean you will face them without losing yourself. It means you will know the difference between a storm that grows you and a storm that destroys you. And with this clarity, your relationships shift in ways you never thought possible. For the first time, love feels like exhaling. It feels like walking into a room and not bracing yourself. It feels like speaking without rehearsing. It feels like being held without questioning if you've earned it. That kind of love, whether it comes from a partner, a friend, or even from yourself, is the deepest reflection of your feminine energy. Because it says, I am worthy of peace. I am worthy of love that does not hurt. I am worthy of choosing myself, even if it means walking away. And this doesn't mean you'll never be tempted by the old patterns. The pull of chaos is strong when it's familiar. But now, you'll notice the difference in your body. Chaos will no longer feel intoxicating, it will feel draining. And peace will no longer feel foreign, it will feel like home. So, if you've been caught in cycles of love that cost you yourself, hear this. Your feminine energy is not found in fixing them. It's found in reclaiming you. In choosing love that feels like safety, devotion, truth. And the moment you do, the cycle breaks. The storm passes. And you, at last, begin to breathe again. The eighth sign that you are embodying your feminine energy is when you stop needing to control everything, and instead, you begin to trust the unfolding. Control was how you survived. You learned that if you could anticipate every shift, manage every mood, carry every detail, maybe then you would be safe. Maybe then love wouldn't leave. Maybe then life wouldn't collapse beneath you. And so, control became your armor. But here's the truth. Control is exhausting. It keeps you hypervigilant, always bracing for the worst, always preparing for battles that sometimes never arrive. And in that state, you are never truly present. You are always living 2 steps ahead, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. The feminine energy within you does not thrive there. She thrives in presence, in surrender, in trust. Not blind trust that ignores reality, but soul-deep trust that says, I can handle what comes. I don't need to grip life so tightly just to feel safe. When you begin to soften control, something shifts. You start to notice the beauty in small moments. The way the light hits your window in the morning. The way laughter feels in your body. The way silence can hold you if you let it. These are things you miss when control runs your life, because control keeps you chasing what hasn't happened yet. Presence lets you finally live what is here now. And I know surrender feels terrifying. It feels like giving up the very thing that's kept you alive. But surrender in the feminine sense is not collapse. It's not passivity. It is choosing to stop gripping what was never yours to hold. It is allowing life to meet you halfway instead of carrying all of it alone. It is releasing the illusion that if you just do more, give more, try harder, you can make everything turn out the way you want. And when you do this, when you begin to trust the flow, instead of forcing it, you notice how much lighter you feel. The anxiety loosens. The constant tension in your chest softens. You begin to feel guided, not just burdened. Because the feminine is not about control, it is about alignment. She knows that what is meant for you cannot be forced, and what is not meant for you cannot be held, no matter how tightly you grip it. This kind of trust doesn't just change your inner world, it changes your relationships too. Suddenly you're no longer clinging to people out of fear. You're no longer micromanaging love, walking on eggshells, performing for approval. Instead, you are meeting others with openness, allowing them to show up or not. And in that openness, you discover who is truly there for you. So breathe. Let yourself imagine what life could feel like if you didn't have to control it all. If you didn't have to keep rehearsing every moment, bracing for every loss, carrying every burden alone. Imagine living from a place of trust, not naive, not blind, but rooted in the knowing that you can meet life as it comes. That is where your feminine energy becomes not just a whisper, but a steady song. The ninth sign that you are awakening your feminine energy is when you no longer run from solitude, but begin to cherish it. For much of your life, being alone may have felt unbearable. Silence could feel like abandonment. Empty rooms could echo with the sound of rejection. And so, you filled your days with noise, people, distractions, anything to avoid the ache of sitting with yourself. But there comes a shift. Slowly, solitude transforms from punishment into sanctuary. Instead of fearing the quiet, you begin to hear yourself again. You notice the subtle truths that get drowned out in the chaos of other people's needs. You feel the rhythm of your own body, your own breath, your own heartbeat. And in that stillness, something sacred awakens. You begin to realize you are not lonely when you are with yourself. You are whole. This does not mean you no longer desire love or companionship. It means you no longer settle for scraps out of fear of being alone. It means you stop chasing after people just to fill the silence. It means you understand that your own presence is enough. And from that enoughness, you create connections rooted in truth rather than desperation. In solitude, the feminine flourishes. She paints, she writes, she sings, she rests. She remembers that the world does not fall apart if she pauses. She remembers that silence is not emptiness. It is space. Space to heal. Space to listen. Space to receive. And it is in this space that your energy replenishes, so that when you step back into the world, you are no longer fragmented, but whole. Of course, solitude can still sting at times. Old wounds may rise up, whispering that you are unworthy, unchosen, forgotten. But now, instead of running from those whispers, you learn to sit with them. You learn to soothe yourself the way you once longed for others to soothe you. You learn to hold your own heart and say, I am here. I will not abandon you. That is the feminine nurturing, steady, eternal. And once you discover this, loneliness loses its grip. You may still feel it from time to time, but it no longer drives your choices. You no longer cling to unhealthy love just to escape silence. You no longer fill your calendar with people who drain you just to avoid your own company. Instead, you begin to guard your solitude as something precious, because solitude is where you remember who you are. It is where your intuition speaks loudest. It is where you realize that your worth was never dependent on who stayed or who left. And from this foundation, every connection you build becomes clearer, deeper, more aligned. Because now you're no longer seeking someone to complete you, you're sharing from a place of wholeness. So, if the quiet feels heavy right now, let it be. Don't rush to fill it. Don't silence it. Sit with it. Because what you fear in that silence is not emptiness, it's truth. And that truth, once you let it in, will set you free. The 10th sign that you are embodying your feminine energy is when you begin to live from authenticity, even when it costs you approval. For so long, you may have shaped yourself into what others needed: quiet when they wanted peace, strong when they needed support, soft when they wanted comfort, small when they felt threatened by your light. And perhaps you became so skilled at adapting that you forgot who you really were beneath all those roles. But there comes a breaking point when the weight of pretending becomes heavier than the risk of being seen. This is when authenticity begins to rise inside you. At first, it may come in small moments: a truth spoken when you would have once stayed silent, a tear you allow to fall instead of swallowing it back, a boundary you hold even when your voice shakes. Each act may feel terrifying, but also strangely liberating, because here is the secret. Authenticity is the ultimate expression of the feminine. She does not exist to perform. She does not mold herself to fit someone else's comfort. She does not shrink to be palatable. She is wild, she is raw, she is true. And when you begin to embody her, you stop apologizing for being too much. You stop apologizing for not being enough. You simply exist as you are: imperfect, messy, radiant. This shift will not always be met with applause. Some will resist your authenticity because it exposes their own pretending. Some will step back because your truth no longer caters to their comfort. And yes, it may hurt. Yes, you may grieve the connections that fall away. But in that grief, you will find freedom. Because for the first time, you will know that the love that remains is real. It is not love for the mask you wore, it is love for you. Living authentically also means you begin to honor your desires without shame. You no longer belittle your dreams to appear humble, nor do you deny your needs to seem selfless. You understand that your longing is sacred, that your joy is holy, that your truth deserves to be lived. And when you step into this, life begins to reflect it back. Opportunities align. Love deepens. The path before you clears. And perhaps most importantly, authenticity brings peace. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you no longer betray yourself to make it easier for others. You may still face challenges, heartbreaks, rejections, but through it all, you remain whole. You remain true. You remain you. So if you've been hiding behind masks, hear this. Your feminine energy is not asking you to be liked by everyone. She is asking you to be real with yourself. And when you are real, you will lose some things, but you will also gain yourself. And that, my friend, is the most precious gain of all. And so we come to the heart of it, the quiet realization that the divine feminine is not something outside of you to chase, but something inside of you to remember. It was there the first time you cried without shame. It was there the first time you felt joy ripple through your body for no reason at all. It was there the first time you listened to your intuition and chose yourself, even when it broke someone else's expectations. She has always been there, waiting patiently for you to return. This journey is not about abandoning your strength. It's about balancing it. The masculine in you builds, protects, directs. The feminine in you feels, nurtures, creates. When one dominates the other, you lose your center. But when they move together, you come alive. You stop living half a life, fractured between survival and longing. And instead you step into the wholeness that was always yours. And maybe this feels radical, because the world often praises only one side. It praises productivity but ignores rest. It praises logic but dismisses intuition. It praises sacrifice but overlooks tenderness. Yet the deepest part of you knows you were never meant to live only on half of your power. You were meant to live with both the fire and the water, the structure and the flow, the clarity and the mystery. What would your life look like if you trusted that you could be both? If you no longer had to choose between strength and softness, between giving and receiving, between logic and intuition? Can you feel how much lighter that would be? How much freer? That is what it means to tap into your feminine energy without losing yourself. You are not erasing who you are. You are expanding into all of who you are. So here you are, standing at a threshold. You can continue the old patterns, overgiving, silencing, surviving, or you can choose a new way. A way of wholeness, a way of truth, a way where your feminine is not buried, but celebrated. The choice is yours. And if these words have touched something in you, I want to thank you for listening, for feeling, for allowing yourself to sit with truths that may not always be easy, but are necessary. If this has resonated with you, I invite you to stay connected. Share this with someone who needs it, so they know they are not alone. Subscribe if your heart feels called, not out of obligation, but because you want to keep walking this path together. Remember this: you are not too much. You are not too soft. You are not broken. You are whole, and the feminine within you has been waiting to remind you of that. The question now is, will you let her?